In New Mexico, a serial killer is at large. For over 30 years, someone or something has swept across the southwest United States, leaving a trail of over 10,000 animal victims in its wake. Death is sudden, and yet the exact cause is still unknown. Body parts and organs are removed with surgical precision. The carcasses show signs of massive hemorrhaging, yet the crime scenes themselves are mysteriously void of any blood or tissue. There are even cases where farmers report seeing bright lights in the sky, army helicopters, and even UFOs. A wave of hysteria has gripped New Mexico and the surrounding states, with everyone asking the same questions. Who's mutilating the cattle and why? And are the authorities covering up the most prolific serial killer in modern history? In Taos, New Mexico, the district attorney, John Paternoster, has reopened the mutilation files and has promised to treat each individual case as a homicide investigation.
The federal government was doing nothing, state government was doing nothing. There had never been an aggressive forensic investigation task force or protocol developed to give any answers. And our first determination was that these cattle mutilation events should be handled like a crime scene, like a homicide crime scene. That would guarantee that competent evidence would be found at the scene, would be collected for analysis that would yield some hard facts.
I'm glad, and I'm very, very glad that someone like John Paternoster, DA of Taos County, where there have been so many occurrences, has taken it seriously. Previous DAs should have. I think some of the more recent cases in Taos County are beginning to assemble some harder evidence in terms of chemical byproducts and so forth and so on. But for the vast majority, almost for all of the cases, not enough hard evidence to really arrive at any conclusions. And that's precisely why we need to treat this more scientifically and do some good criminalistics and good forensics. And I think we'll come up with the hard evidence.
I've been shot at in this business years in the past. I don't have any fear that would distract me from the inquiry that is so important to ranchers in this area.
One of the first mutilation cases to be investigated as a homicide was in Arroyo Seco, a rural area just outside Taos. Rancher Manuel Archuleta says he found his 11-month-old bull dead and mutilated, having seen the animal in perfect health only days before.
It was a normal day. I just check my cows every morning, every day. And this day I walked out there on the 30th of April, and they were okay, just normal, eating. The next morning I went to check them again. I found the bull dead. I hadn't seen anything like that before. I've heard about it, but I hadn't seen it around here.
Manuel called the DA's office, and a task force swung into action.
This particular morning, which was May 4th, 1997, I was on call from 4 in the morning till 8 in the morning. Our radio dispatch advised me at approximately 7:30 in the morning that there was a farmer, Mr. Archuleta from Arroyo Seco, was reporting one of his small calves had been possibly mutilated.
Within a few hours, 4 units from the sheriff's office had cordoned off the area and a crime scene had been established. District Attorney John Paternoster was joined by his associate Dominic Martinez and field investigator Gay Valdez from the National Institute of Discovery Science. Donning protective clothing, they prepared for a full field necropsy.
The curious thing about cattle mutilation is that at first you kind of think lightly of it and that it's not really that important of a call, but when you get at the scene and you actually see this animal on the ground and you see that it appears that the eyes have been surgically taken out, or it's just kind of, it gives you a really weird feeling that there's some foul play involved, and as an officer you want to investigate, you want to try to get to the bottom of it because it's something that baffles you.
As I approached, I saw no evidence that people other than Mr. Archuleta had been out there. I saw what appeared to me to be a young bull in a corner of a fence. It had a rather grievous wound on its hindquarters, and it had been dead for, unfortunately, a number of days when we first got to the scene.
We went ahead and skinned it and discovered a big hole in the neck, about 5 by 8, that appeared to have some burn marks on it inside.
We did find a substance that we just called a yellow powder. It didn't seem to belong on the animal. It was found around this neck wound, a small hole in the neck of the animal.
The substance was analysed. It showed a lethal dose of potassium, 7,000% more than you would normally find in a dead animal. The forensic scientists in charge of the analysis have no explanation as to how it got there. Like so many mutilation cases before, the perpetrator left no calling card. There were no tyre tracks or footprints. But there was one intriguing clue: the pattern of the cowpats.
We were speculating that maybe something had flown over the field and had lifted these pies and flipped them over like a helicopter or something like that. It was just really bizarre. As we started to work the crime scene, we determined that there was actually a pattern. It looked like there was a corridor of these pies that had been turned over.
They're talking about something out of space, I guess, UFOs, and I don't know what to think, what it would be. It's a strange thing going on.
Given the lack of physical evidence at the scene, there's no man-made print and no animal print present, which leads me to believe that there might be either some advanced technology involved or that they covered their tracks very, very well.
We have not ruled out UFOs as a pet theory. The Arroyo Seco scene did yield some very curious marks in the soil, in the land around the animal that did not appear to be natural in origin.
As the team skinned the animal, they noticed that the tissue on its back was blood red, showing signs of massive hemorrhaging. Hemorrhaging that can only have been caused by a fatal blow from above. Is the Arroyo Seco bull a smoking gun? Is it the first hard evidence that the perpetrators are airborne?
I have to say, we ruled out, as far as I'm concerned, a satanic ritual as being behind the cattle mutilation that victimized Mr. Archuleta's herd. There was no evidence at all of any human activity around that mutilated cow whatsoever. The black helicopter pet theory seems to be the most persistent of all of the theories that we have heard as being at the root of the cattle mutilations.
The precise surgical nature of the entry wounds, the lack of blood and tissue, and the entrails around the bodies, and the literal frying of the blood at high temperatures are the three big questions facing investigators.
We've had some testing done on the samples that I've taken, and the results have come back where it is done with very high heat.
Quite a number of cases, in excess of 30 or 40 now. High heat has been the cutting instrument. Now, coyotes have bad breath, but not 350-degree bad breath. So we may be dealing with something that is utilizing high technology.
We are aware that certain of the military installations in New Mexico have technology that could very well have caused these kinds of injuries.
Cattle mutilations are characterized by wounds on the animals seemingly made by surgical laser devices, some kind of surgical laser scalpels, if you will. I've discovered in recent years that the United States Air Force has such a device, which they developed in-house, a field-capable, portable belt-pack surgical laser that is powered by dry cell batteries.
We've managed to obtain footage of the laser pack from one of the United States' most secure research facilities. This laser would be the perfect device to cut through cowhide and remove organs in the field.
Weapons-class lasers can consist of millions of watts of power. The same technology was used to create this self-contained laser. The laser would be used by a surgeon in the battlefield to do laser surgery.
If surgical lasers are used to cut open the cows, just how are they transported out of these landlocked pastures without being detected? Strange lights in the sky and unmarked helicopters have been reported just before and after mutilations are discovered. If no tyre tracks or footprints are found around the animals, are the mutilators airborne?
A lot of the cases I've handled, the only way you go in is with an aircraft. There's no other way you can go in. There's no other tracks leading into the fenced area, the ranch, and there's no other way they could have gone in.
This is the one that really turned my head around, way out in the middle of nowhere. A female cow lying on its right side, and it looked like it had been dropped from at least 1,000 feet in the air. Its horn was driven back into the side of its head where it hit on that side and drove the horn right back into the skull. Its leg was broken, its ribs were broken, and Officer Valdez pointed out a band about perhaps 2 inches of indented hair. He speculated that it had been grabbed from the air somehow and hoisted up by its back legs, mutilated in the air, and dropped back to the ground.
There has been some cases where people have seen a cow underneath a helicopter in a harness, like it's being airlifted someplace. In broad daylight, we've got a couple of cases like that.
In the mid-'70s, ranchers were firing at helicopters, and the public service companies had to fly much higher. There were several incidents where ranchers shot at helicopters, and that's why one of the reasons why they've tried to put a damper on this, because the situation was potentially very dangerous.
I've had a number of reports. People have been within feet of helicopters. Most of the time, they're reported hovering just over the individual, and they're blasted by the downdraft from the rotors, but there's no engine sound. Nothing. Obviously, the jump one could make is that our government or military has some sort of sound cancellation or sound noise abatement equipment that they're managing somehow to render at least the motor part of the helicopter silent.